Hello, friends, neighbors. John, your whiskey neighbor here, and welcome down to the Nook. Welcome to Saturday, and it's going to be all Maker's Mark today. I haven't talked Maker's Mark for a while, and as I do, I found a decent sale on this 101 and thought, well, I should talk about Makers a little bit. Tiny bit about this story. I don't know enough to be a good storyteller on that one, but I'll share a few thoughts, and then we'll get into Maker's Mark. Classic hand dip bottle, a wheated bourbon. I think everyone who's ever had a bourbon knows, oh yeah, it's a wheated bourbon. They're probably going to take Maker's Mark. And we're going to take the regular, just some thoughts, and then we'll talk about the one-on-one, the bigger proof, maybe a different selection process. How much difference does it make on the flavor profile? So if you have any Maker's Mark, which if you are into bourbon, you probably have on the shelf, why don't you pour a little? And let's share some thoughts together today about this iconic bourbon. 3, 4. Thanks for coming back, and hope you have a bit of Makers in your glass. So, we'll start with the regular Makers. Up here, where I am in my market, it often goes on sale. It's an affordable, yet good or decent bourbon. As you should know, if not, this is a wheated bourbon. So instead of rye, which is more typical in the mash bill, we've got like 70 corn, 16 red winter wheat, and 14 malted barley, mashed, distilled in copper stills, and then put together laid out in casks and aged, and we come out with this 45% wheated bourbon. Now, they're known for a lot of things, like the classic hand-dipped top. We'll get into that a little bit and how that came about. But they also do some not necessarily unique, but staying at it for so long, really characteristic. They rotate their barrels through their rickhouse, that I understand, so they hand turn their barrels in a way, and they've used the same yeast strain for like 60 years. They've got a lot of history, even though really Makers is a younger distillery. Somewhere in the 50s, was it 53, that they really started making their bourbon? Bill Samuel and Marjorie, his wife. It's a family business. I'll tell a little bit more of that tale maybe a bit later, because sometimes I just want to know about the whiskey. So this is Maker's Mark, the regular entrance bourbon on the nose. Classic bourbon notes, lots of vanilla, a bit of sweetness. For me in Makers, I often get a sweeter cherry. So sweet cherry, lots oak already, lots of fresh, not necessarily tannic, but you got that oak in the nose already, vanilla. I don't get a lot of cooked deep sugars. I don't get a lot of darker leathered fruits. It's sweet, and it's got a lot of oak and vanilla. That's the nose for me. Let's try the palate, the regular Maker's Mark. Cheers. I know that a lot of conversation happens around Makers about how smooth and gentle it is. Because of that red winter wheat instead of rye. Rye definitely carries more spice, more heat, more peppering, and I don't get that rye spice, heat, or peppering. Fair. But I find Makers drying and oaky, and a little bit of fruits here, lots of vanillas there, but doesn't have a lot of cooked thick brown sugars, not a lot of butter tart, not a lot of, fuller, richer flavors. For me, it's a little drying, sweet. It's nice, and it certainly is softer in that it doesn't have rye spice. But I don't find it a soft, mellow bourbon. I better try another sip. Cheers. Second sips are always better. It gave me just a little bit more there. Now I can get a little more cinnamons, a little more baking goodness, a little more breadiness in there. Perhaps that's the wheat. So there is more character. It does come out. But overall, this classic bottle and really cool label and story hits just okay for me. Thankfully, as I said, it's often on offer up here, like on sale. It's a great value, and it's a solid bourbon, and I have poured it for many, and many enjoy it more than me. Something about it, it just sits around the 3.5 stars. I don't mind it. I return to this bottle. I've bought many of them, so it's not bad. It just doesn't light me up. And part of that's too bad because, you know, their story about maybe, was it Pappy Van Winkle that could it have been the wheat recipe or was it the rye recipe? Not rye, the yeast to Bill Samuel. And then he took that and tried 7 different loaves of breads to try different mash bills because you get some of that chemistry when you're making breads. There's lots of cool things. And then Margie, she is the marketing genius, the shape, the label, the hand dipping, came out as a premium bourbon and still sits as a premium bourbon. So I really like everything about Maker's Mark, but the regular doesn't cut it. So then I saw this 101. Will this change my mind? Well, I got to clear my palate and I'll give you some thoughts. So as I was just starting to say, this 101, I haven't ran to it mostly because while I like Makers, it just doesn't really light up for me. And this usually sits around $100 Canadian, which is a fair amount for bourbon. So I like, it's got to be good, right? And then as I was lucky, found this bottle at BSW in Calgary for a really, really good price. And so, as I do, when things are $45 off, you gotta buy them. Like, you just have to. So I bought this 101, and the story behind the 101, as I understand it, is, Bill Samuel Sr. liked a little higher proof, so it is at the 101 instead of the 90s. So we're 50.5%, and they spend a bit more time. At least it says that here that they really, our signature release, hand select barrels for specific taste profiles. So there's a greater selection process. The bottle is darker. I don't know the age. I'm going to say 5.6 for this. Does this mean this is 7.8? I don't know. It is darker for sure. Probably doesn't come across on the camera. And I thought, well, okay, I'm willing to give it. Got it on a good sale. So does the 101, is it worth more than the regular Maker's Mark? Let's try it on the nose. It is a richer nose. Now that's partly, a little more alcohol, can probably get some more of those, but there is some more of that richer sugars. This plays into like light vanilla sweetness right now. This is getting a little darker. A little more cinnamon, a little more brown sugar, and a little darker cherry than just that light maraschino syrup over here. Let's give it a try on the palate. Cheers. Immediately, that is so much better. Maybe I'm I don't know if the word is proof hound or something. I really don't know, but I don't feel it more aggressive or more burning, even though it is more alcoholic. It is richer. It's actually thicker. It actually holds more in the mouth. I've got now dark cooked brown sugars mixed in with some cherry, cinnamons going on. Vanilla is still there, some nice sweet light vanilla. Gonna try another sip. Cheers. Now that's got a little bit more heat. Not negatively, just a little more spice, a little bit of peppering in there. Sugars now maybe are thicker in like a fudge, caramel. It still is quite oaky. I find both of these quite oaky. I've always found Maker's Mark of many of the bourbons really drying and slightly tannic on the back end, which is interesting because they make a comment about how they air dry and get their oak, through a summer and 9 months or something like that to make sure it's not too tannic. I find this quite oaky. That said, this 101, for me, obviously it's always just my thoughts and my palate, but is actually quite a bit better than the regular Maker's Mark. This is fine, but I rarely go for it. This is good. This is good bourbon. And I got it on a crazy, I think $65 Canadian. That's great. At that price, I will buy it again. At $100, I'm not going to run to it. That sits on the shelf at about $100 around here. I'm not going to run to it, but it is head and shoulders above this. Like, truly better. And a lot of people like the 46 with the French oak staves, but I don't as much on that one. I find that I find it's even more oaky, and this is right on the edge of where I like the oak in my bourbon. So this is way better. If this is 3.5, this is like 4.25. This is really good bourbon. It's just it's also pretty pricey, and that's a stretch for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the 101? Did you have a similar experience as me? This is okay, and this is really good, or are they really just the same for you but higher proof? Not for me. For me, this came out a clear winner. Share your thoughts below. Thanks for joining me here, and I hope you guys are just having a great weekend.